They say two people cannot share a dream. I must find another man and a dream to prove this wrong. Once upon a time, there lived a girl who'd always dream of cul-de-sacs. And she would wake up amused. What was amusing was to look for these dead ends in the real world and not find them. She would be frantic at first, but she had learned to not expect. What was to be read and dreamt of must not essentially be found here, because the windows of eyes open towards the external world and never inwards. And then there were these writers who would promise to emancipate and fall short of themselves. Also, these books had no pictures. Pictures of apples and cherries where you would just lose yourself over their redness. Or talk of grass, a shade of green and a shade darker, greener than green. Upon the same time as her lived a man who did not belong. And for him, who did not belong, writing became a homeland. The lousily ambitious man finds satisfaction in doing what his detractors think he cannot. The overly ambitious finds great satisfaction in doing what his detractors cannot imagine. But he was in transience. For a man who at the mention of women would squeal, whether you end up as a wife or a girlfriend, you're only going to get a page in my book. Waste as many pennies as you like, but never waste any poetry on women, and such, he had grown insanely absorbed in finding his heroine. And so, the twain shall meet. And they must have a million little conversations, out of context and out of vanity, as possibly incoherent as incoherent can be. He'd tell her how he had always found neat substitutions for guilt, and she would tell him how she believes love happens only once, just like everything else, and how before that first time it is only an illusion of love, or an anticipation internalized, and how after that first time it's an aberration of things past, an attempt to complete, to change or to revert, or to cling on to, or to give space, everything but love. He would tell her he procrastinates to a point where things cease to exist, they tread on extinction. She would tell him why she'd never believe a man who had a lot to speak about himself. And after they have talked things out, they would still find something to talk about silence. He had always had answers with him, only he did not know what to do with them, whether to frame questions and look like a philosopher, or to imagine its extraterrestrial possibilities and look like a mad scientist, or to just leave it at that and hope to be understood in the next 200 years. He felt muddle-headed. Characters take on life sometimes by luck, but one would suspect it is when you can write more entirely out of yourself, inside the skin, heart, mind, and soul of a person who's not yourself, that a character becomes, in his own right, another human being on the page. More misery. There's an old folklore about the fate of a lie. It says, shut yourself in a room and repeat a lie 100 times, and you would come out believing it to be true. Tell this lie to 10 friends and convince them about it. The result, ditto. But the most efficient way of believing in a lie is to hear it from a stranger just the way you have known it. One wonders whether the same could be said about the two. But then, you would have to give them the benefit of doubt. Well, in a novel of travelling salesman style, as nauseating as a toxic wind. In a novel of travelling salesman style, as nauseating as a toxic wind.